All right. Hello, everyone. This is another episode of Conversations with Rob. It is also called Fire Breathing Rob. We're just changing the name on the websites right now. So thank everybody for listening to the podcast, which we're doing right now. Appreciate that over our 10 different radio stations, which you will be listening to on a little bit later. Thank you for that. I have a special guest who I'm very fond of, Rachael Ventura. She is from Will County Board, and she is a representative there, and she is also running for the Congressional District 11 in Illinois. She's got a pretty good amount of endorsements, so this may take a little bit of time. She's endorsed by the Sunrise Movement, Marianne Williamson, Our Revolution, Brand New Congress, Friends of Earth, and also the Democratic Socialists of America. That is a mouthful. That's why I pretty much stuttered. So a lot of people for Rachael, and I'm grateful for that. And Rachael, your election is March 17th, but there is also some early voting going on in Illinois right now. So definitely get out and vote for Rachael and other progressive candidates up and down the ballot. But first of all, thank you so much, Rachael, for coming on the program. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, early voting's already begun here. February 6th it began, and so we are well on our way. We got 3 weeks left, so we're excited. But it's a lot of hard work. We're out there knocking doors and getting the progressive message out.
So, Rachael, you're running against another corporate Democrat, and they're all over the country and all over Congress in general. His name is Bill Foster, and as I told you before we started the interview, I was listening a little bit of him talk about his issues, and it just seems like he's, as I said, another corporate Democrat, nothing new, just following the same corporate mold. He takes money from big polluters, the fossil fuel industry, which you don't take money from, and you also don't get the corporate backing that he's getting, and you're not taking that kind of money. So thank you for that. But yeah. I was reading about you before we started the interview, and can you talk about growing up? I know your dad was involved in politics, but I also want to hear the story about your mom too, if you could talk about that.
Yeah, so both my parents were working class parents. My dad served on the Will County Board 40 years ago. So it was actually before I was born. He had already exited the political scene when my family decided to raise a family. My dad then took a job as a bridge tender. Here we have a lot of bridges. There's a river that cuts through our hometown here. And, he worked as a union worker with the Teamsters. And then retired. And my mom went to school when I was in second grade. So she was a stay-at-home mom until that point. And honestly, some of it was the Reagan economics that changed, what it meant for working class families. Instead of having one parent at home, it was a necessity for both parents to work to make ends meet. And so she became a school teacher, and my mom worked as a public school teacher until she retired. We all went to public schools, and my parents have always taught us that our government is supposed to be working for everyone. And so I feel like the platform I'm running on, to me, it's not a strange platform. Like, this is the way our government is supposed to be working. But as you alluded to, so many of our corporate Democrats and corporate Republicans have hijacked our government to only work for the wealthy few, for special interests. And it's time that we give that power back to the people and make sure that we're prioritizing our taxpayer dollars to go towards things like education, healthcare, renewable energies, and good paying jobs.
So is that the main reason why you ran, just because you've seen all this corporate, cronyism happening in Washington, D.C. and, all over the country for that matter? And we see all these issues coming up, and they're, tapping into what's going on to the presidential race with Senator Sanders, with the income inequality, the environmental issues all over the country. We see pipelines all over the country, fracking, and there's so many other issues, student debt, that it's happening all over the country. Jobs, as far as you just spoke about with your mom being a union teacher. I am a teacher also in the state of Florida. And we see all these issues going on, and nobody's doing anything. The Democrats are supposed to be the fighters for the people, the people that were, JFK we looked at, FDR. We don't have any Democratic leaders really like that anymore. But is that why you fought fighting to run? Because you see there's no hope really in the Democratic Party anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when they say all politics are local politics, it's true. The thing that got me into politics was a local issue. So I had moved home in 2016. I was a military spouse for 10 years, had to leave a difficult marriage, moved home, and I was complaining about the trash in the streets, plastic bags in the trees. Our roads are horrendous here. They're so tore up. And when I was complaining to my dad, he's the one who said, why don't you go do something about it? And I said, what am I going to do? He said, go run for office. And I remember saying, Dad, that's the dumbest idea. Who goes through a divorce and runs for office? But a few weeks later, I was down at the clerk's office getting a petition and finding out how to learn how to get signatures. My first race, I ran for city council, and I had a great showing. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I didn't even go to my party. I just started knocking doors, talking to people. And I think that's the right way to do it, to be honest. I found out so much more doing it that way and learning about the people's issues than being told what to think or do. In my second race, though, when I ran for Will County Board, I did approach the party, and they told me not to run, that they had someone else in mind. I needed to be loyal and wait my time. And so after already talking to the people, I was like, that's not how this is supposed to work. I ran against my party's wishes. I was the top vote getter in the primary. And even then, in a 2-seat race, the other Democrat would not work with me in the race.
Wow.
So I beat the other Democrat by 11 percentage points and the other Republican by 8 percentage points. And, I didn't take any corporate dollars in that race. I believe, like I did growing up, like I do now, that our government has to work for everyone. And so we need to make sure that we have policies that affect everyone and not take large corporate donors' money and then only affect policies that work for them. That's what we've seen across the country. And like you're saying, as a teacher, my mom was a teacher growing up, and then, you're a teacher there. But when I lived in Washington State, even, they had an emergency that they could not fill their classrooms with a teacher. So they were hiring anybody with a bachelor's degree to become a substitute teacher so that they could hire all their substitute teachers into the classrooms, and they still had a shortage. We do not pay teachers enough money in this country, but there's so many other jobs we don't pay enough for either, and it's the race to the bottom. And until we start setting policies and dictating, like I said before, our taxpayer dollars going to the areas that are most needed in our society, we're going to continue to see crumbling effects. So the thing that launched me into this race was actually healthcare. After I got elected to the Will County Board, and I was asked to go speak to Bill Foster about signing on to the Medicare for All bill. And so I met with him. He refused to sign on. He had some questions, concerns about insurance. I had worked in the insurance industry as an actuary when I first got out of college. And so we said, great, we'll get you all your answers and come back. Then he wouldn't take our second meeting. We tried rescheduling multiple times. He eventually canceled it, saying he could only speak with constituents once per year per issue. So we'd have to wait a whole nother year before he could discuss healthcare with us. That's ridiculous. 40,000 people alone die every year just because insurance denies their claims. And so we rallied his offices with the help of our revolution. And, he told the press he'd meet with us then, still wouldn't meet with us. People encouraged me to get into the race then. And I really wasn't ready to run for Congress. And I had said, no, you guys, we can find another way, keep working to show them what the people want. But just a few months later, environmental groups had rallied his office on the Green New Deal. Now, our congressman is a scientist, and every year he reminds us that he's the only person in Congress with a PhD, and basically implies that he's fighting for us on the congressional level when it comes to the climate crisis. So for him to say that the Green New Deal was not practical, that he wouldn't support it, for me, that was the final straw. When I left the insurance company, I became a naturalist working in the state of Georgia at the Longleaf Pine Forests, and I was restoring our pine forests out there. So I thought, okay, you cannot be a scientist and not support this. Meanwhile, he is taking money from fossil fuel. He is backing fossil fuel bailout bills to the tune of $50 million. That's just not the direction we need to go. And so between healthcare and the climate, I couldn't sit by it anymore and let that happen. We talked about it earlier. Corporate Democrats and corporate Republicans are the problem. And you're right, we don't have the leaders that we need to stand up for 95% of Americans who are working their butt off, not getting ahead, spinning wheels. And we're seeing that fallout when people lose hope, when they can't cope with it in things like drug overdoses, gun violence, suicides, and then increased crime. There's a better way out there, and we need leaders who are going to show us that way and make sure that we're taking care of one another, and we can do it. And I think we can do it this election cycle. As you said, there's people running all over the United States, races just like mine, where they're not taking any corporate PAC dollars, where they're out there fighting for the people, they're doing the right thing, and we got to get behind them. You know, if that means donating, if that means walking doors, phone banking, you know, it's more than just a presidential candidate. I know a lot of eyes are on that right now, but honestly, when the president turns over, they need a Congress that's going to also push these issues that help working class people, and that's why races like mine are so important.
Well, as you just stated, it's not just about the president, and I think Bernie's running on not me, us, and that's, you know, basically the message. It's not about Bernie, it's that we have to build that whole movement so we can get a lot of legislation, as you're fighting for, passed. And I thought it was kind of funny that you brought up that you were working with another Democrat in the race and he wouldn't help you out. And it just seems, and we've heard this line before, you know, they say that there's two parties, but it's not really two parties. It's one party, the money party, and we ain't in it. So it's really sad. But can you talk about that now in Will County? You've worked with Republicans and got things done. We always hear all these stuff about Joe Biden on the debate stage saying, I can get things done. I worked with Mitch McConnell. We saw what happened in Barack Obama's presidency when Joe Biden worked with Mitch McConnell. It was either right-wing stuff that got done or nothing. But you got things done with Republicans. Can you speak about that?
Yeah, so I want to have a disclaimer here. When we hear, as American people hear things have been pushed through bipartisan, I think we have to take a hard look at what that means. Does that mean that people did work across the aisle, or did that mean that we just continue to back the special interests in this country? And, you know, like you said, is it a one-party system or a two-party system? And is it a party of the haves and the have-nots, or is it right and left issues? So what I want to say about that is, although I have gotten things passed by partisanship, I would say it's because I've fought my own party about doing what is right. And I didn't always get the support from my own aisle because of whatever interest they had with their donors and their agenda. And it wasn't the people's agenda. So I luckily sit it's 2 seats per district, and the person who sits across the aisle for me is a Republican. And we put our partisanship hats aside and said, at the county level, there's so much that we can be doing to help the people, and that's where we focus. And we never discuss any of the other issues that are not voted on the county. We strictly stick to what is important for our people. And I'm a strong fighter, so I'm not going to let someone bully me and pull the wool over my eyes and make it sound like, you know, privatization of our water is good. So that's one of the things we fought against. And I was able to get my Republican counterpoint to see why this is important. Cost of water would have gone up. It takes the hands out of the people. And so luckily, you know, she helped me with that issue, in a 15-year issue of them trying to sell off water that they weren't, a water system that they weren't protecting. We ended up being able to use our county money to fix the system and get a neighboring city to take it on so they still have public water. We also passed the Greenest Region Compact, which is similar to the Green New Deal. It's a sustainability plan for our county. And here again, you know, we were able to get Republicans to sign on because they understood the importance of our open lands, protecting air and water, you know, and I bring it back to the people. This is what the people need. And how is it going to look to your constituents if you're not going to back something like this? And I think that's what it comes down to. We can't be afraid to leverage the voters. I mean, that's the most important thing. Right now, we see a lot of leverage of money in politics. But that's not what our politics are supposed to be about. That's not what our government is supposed to be about. And it's time that we get back to really using the power of the people to make sure that those policies are set for the people's needs.
Your district is pretty, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because you live there, of course, is pretty diverse. I mean, there's quite a bit of Hispanics, there's white, black, Native American. So why would a person, and is it just blue no matter who over there, that they just keep voting in Bill Foster year after year because he's a Democrat? This is a Democratic district. Because it seems, as you know, we talked about earlier in the interview, he takes all this money from fossil fuels, and we look at, and you spoke about with water issues, And we see water issues all over the country: Flint, Michigan, Newark, East Chicago, Indiana. We see water issues, which is right in the Midwest, and nothing's getting solved. It's even getting worse. In North Carolina, there's been issues. We could, go on and on. But why do you think that this guy keeps getting elected, especially with the environmental issues that you spoke about? There's so many environmental issues with droughts in the Midwest too, or flooding in Iowa. We've seen that too.
So to be honest, it's because no one's run against him. He has $5 million in the bank. And when I first started talking to other politicians about running after the healthcare rally, they were saying, no, we don't want to run, but you should run. And after the third time hearing that, I said, why? I was outspent in my first two races. The first one had a great showing. The second one I won. They didn't want to burn bridges with the party, right? They wanted be in the favorite. Well, I had already burned those bridges. And then they wanted a strong message of the people. And so they knew that those were the things that I brought to the table, but they're the same things that prevent other people from running against incumbents. We've seen that the DCCC has doubled down on incumbents. They sent out, our state county association sent out a letter to each of the county party leaders and said that you are to back the incumbent. They told them flat out, you are to back the incumbent. We have to pay for our own voter files. Even though I'm a Democrat, I no longer have access to the Democratic voter files. So things like that, there are barricades set up so that people cannot challenge the status quo. And what does my opponent have to fear? Right? If he's such a great leader, the people will want to vote him back in. The fact that they have to go through all this, he already has the money advantage, the incumbency advantage. Now he's got the party advantage. We're seeing this time and time again across the United States. This is not about, for them, it's not about having the people vote them in. It's about manipulation. It's about control. And that's not the government. That's not a democracy. And so we must take this back and give it to the people so that anybody can run. I'm running on campaign finance reform. I believe that any American should be able to run for office, not just those who have millions of dollars. But yeah, it's been almost 10 years since he was last challenged. And that's really what it comes down to, is when you don't have a Democratic challenger. We're in a highly Democratic area. It's a D+9. And like you said, we're very diverse: Hispanic, Black, white, Asian. And so people are not being represented here. And more so than that, I don't think it's the race that divides us much in this county or in this district. It's the class war, right? The haves and the have-nots. 2/3 of my district on average, we don't make $15 an hour. Meanwhile, the other third of the district makes more than double that. And we have the highest paid county, or actually city, in the entire United States on average pay. So we have a lot of haves, and we've got a whole lot more have-nots. And it's time that we make sure that those policies are helping us too.
Again, Rachael Ventura interviewing with us today. She's running for Congressional District 11 here in Illinois. I want to talk more about this issue. We seem like a lot of the most important issues to a lot of progressives. And actually, before we get into that, I want to bring this up. You said about the voter files, that you're not getting them. I just spoke to another woman that was running for Congress on the brand new Congress in New Jersey. She just talked to us before you. She said she had to pay $6,000 for those. I talked to Kimberly Graham. She was running in Iowa and for the Senate race over there, brand new Congress too. She had to drop $60,000 to the Iowa Democratic Party. So they almost make it unaffordable. You talk about people challenging incumbents, and they play their favorites. You can't challenge them because you don't have the kind of cash to drop. I don't know too many people that have $60,000, $6,000, or whatever it may be to just drop to run for office. I mean, these are not regular people. You stated in your interview against Bill Foster, he's the 43rd richest congressman in Congress. So, I mean, it's insanity. But is that what you had to do? Is you had to pay for these voter files?
Yeah, we paid almost $7,000. And what's interesting is, it's like you said, it's not a set amount. They basically look at, what does your race look like? How much do we think you can afford? How much can you raise? And then they give us the price of how much our voter files are going to cost. So it really is determined, arbitrarily based on how much money they think they can get out of you. And it is sad. So yeah, Bill Foster is the 34th richest person in Congress. But more than that, 40% of Congress are millionaires. So who are they representing? That tells you right there who they're representing. If we want everyday people to be represented, we have to send everyday people there. I'm a single mom. I work 2 jobs, and neither one of my jobs pays $15 an hour. It's time that we change that across the United States.
So how do you campaign and do all this stuff? I mean, you must be Wonder Woman.
99% of everyone working our campaign is volunteers. We're all sacrificing our money, our time. We believe in the cause. I have very few paid staff because mostly they need it. They can't survive without it. But so many people have stepped up and said, even though, it's a hardship on them too, taking time away from their families. I mean, my girls have sacrificed so much as well. But we believe that this has to happen. Not only do we need democracy, we need a planet we're going to live on. And we're not moving towards a sustainable planet. And I believe that our district is ground zero for the Green New Deal. We have chemical plant cleanups. We have coal ash leaching into our waterways. We have 2 refineries here. I mean, we have low-paying jobs. We have the largest inland port in the world in my backyard. And they're trying to bring in another 2,200 acres, which is about the size of O'Hare Airport, 3 times the size of O'Hare Airport. It creates air pollution. It's low-paying jobs. There's temp agencies that exploit undocumented citizens, people with felonies. It's slave labor out here, and we're a prison town. So every aspect of what is wrong in society is right here in my backyard, and it's time that we change that. We have some amazing things too, like the National Lincoln Cemetery, where our veterans are buried, including my grandfather. We have the Tallgrass Midway Day-One National Prairies. We have an ability to put people to work doing solar, wind. We have agriculture here, but we also have a lot of city infrastructure. So we have the ability to do the Green New Deal, help these areas, people who need to transition away from the refinery jobs and fossil fuel jobs. We're pushing that currently at the county level. We're trying to transfer our waste management plant into creating natural gas so we can get off of coal, get off of fracking. These are the type of projects that we need to be doing all across the United States, putting our taxpayer dollars into that so that we can change everything that we're doing, including our infrastructure, moving to electric cars. I mean, those are the type of jobs that will put people back to work. That's what the original New Deal was about when FDR passed it. And that's what the Green New Deal is going to be about now too. Putting people to work to save our planet, to save our society.
Rachael Ventura running for Congress in District 11 in Illinois. I want to go into this. You spoke about this a lot, jobs and automation in the interview that I watched with you and Bill Foster, who's running against you. And there's a crisis in the Midwest for jobs. We even look at, in the past experience of what happened, not in the Midwest, but with Amazon in New York, as far as jobs. We've seen Amazon and Walmart, these big corporations, come and build their big super centers or their big office areas. And then in Amazon, they're making people urinate in cups. They don't give them adequate breaks. I mean, Bernie got it to $15 an hour, which is a great first step, and I commend him and the workers for that. But it's still not enough, as you spoke about. But can you talk about that jobs and automation crisis in the Midwest, right where you are?
Yeah, so we have 6 Amazon fulfillment centers in my district, and they're getting ready to bring in the 7th. And it's, it looks good on paper that Amazon wants to pay $15 an hour, but like I said, many of their warehouse jobs are actually hired through temp agencies, which are not paying $15 an hour. And then the other problem we have is that they're not union jobs, so the working conditions are pretty horrendous. And the problem with the way it's set up here with this inland port and multiple warehouses is each entity has to unionize. They're not under a giant umbrella like how you would think like electrical workers are or plumbers are. They're all under the same umbrella. Warehouse workers aren't like that, and this is because of some of the laws that we've changed to create unions. So I am pro-union. Both my parents, my grandfather was a union worker. I think the Green New Deal can get us back to unions because of the guaranteed jobs, a federal jobs guarantee. We can force people to have the ability to unionize if they want to. And these right to work states, they're part of the problem. And so we're seeing that here in our district too, with the temp agencies not allowing people to unionize through all of the different levels of complexity. And so those people have horrendous working conditions. As far as automation, there's a couple of things I'd like to say about that. One of it is a lot of environmentalists have said that it's not automation in itself that's losing its jobs, it's a slowing economy. So if you think about it, when you're driving, you're sitting at a stoplight, and the car next to you starts to move forward and you feel like you're moving backwards, that's how automation is. Like, automation is still moving forward, but our slowing economy is so slow that it feels like we're going backwards with that. The other thing I want to say about automation is there are areas that we're going to need automation. Nobody wants nobody wants to work the warehouse job that's killing their body. So in some cases, those jobs can help people, but we need to make sure there are enough jobs somewhere else that are paying a living wage where people aren't working 2 or 3 jobs to make things work. Great example. If we actually paid teachers $60,000 or more in this country, teachers could just be working as a teacher, not also taking the bartender shift at the end of the night. That's part of the problem, is that you have, too many people taking on more jobs, and then there's not enough to go around for everyone else. The other area is things like recycling. So much of our recycling is not cleaned and separated correctly, and so then we cannot sell that off to China. We cannot recycle it ourselves, and so it ends up back in our landfills. This is an area that automation could solve because there's dangerous chemicals, there's sharp objects, and it's difficult to sort that. So until we have a different sorting system here, this is an area we could be using automation to solve our problems, and so many more. So, Bill Foster thinks that the #1 problem we have in our district is automation. But honestly, the #1 problem is the wealth gap, the health crisis, and the climate crisis. And that's what we talked about in that interview before. We can have automation solve some of our problems, but we have so many other issues of people who are currently working jobs and are not able to pay their bills.
Yeah, you brought up great points on Amazon, and I agree with that. What is also not brought up by, people that, to speak about Amazon bringing, jobs in. Yes, they're bringing jobs, and you brought up all the facts about that, but it's not talked about of all these other stores that are getting creamed by Amazon, bringing in those fulfillment centers, and they're losing a lot of jobs and a lot of workers. You look at a lot of malls, you look at JCPenney, Macy's, a lot of those stores that were in malls or outside.
Toys R Us.
Toys R Us closed down, correct. All those stores are closing down because of Amazon. And bookstores, there's no bookstores. Borders went out of business. There's Barnes and Nobles, and I don't know how good they're doing, but we could go on about that for days, but that's something that no one really talks about.
And the environmental aspect of that. There was some people outside of Seattle who were doing studies about the 2-day shipping, 1-day and 2-day shipping, and it's as if they were running coal plants 24 hours just because of the truck traffic that they put off into the truck pollution they put into the air. In our area, because of this inland port, the amount of trucks that come in and out, there's a statistic we did. We had a study done on the Will County Board, and it showed that 63% of all goods that are shipped in this country go through our county. So this inland port is really huge to getting things to people. We have a massive amount of trucks on our roadways, which is one reason our roads are tore up. But then more than that, we have an 8% increase in asthma over the last 6 years because of the diesel particulate matter that comes off of there. It penetrates your lungs differently than other pollutants. So this is another aspect. If we care about our climate, we care about clean air, care about our health, because now, COPD is the 1 in 4 people will have COPD, and many of them have never smoked before. So we don't think these things affect our lives. But when we get older and we start realizing, why do I have this? Oh, I live next to an industrial park, and that breathing in that diesel air over and over again caused, a lower health or ultimately quality of life, right? We're lowering our quality of life. So where is Amazon in picking up those costs? Right? Their truck traffic, they're destroying our roads, destroying our airways. So it's more, that $15 an hour, when you start to look at it, the effects of Amazon putting people out of work, like you said, in these other industries and these other businesses, basically creating a monopoly, is really detrimental to the American people. And Jeff Bezos, he doesn't pay the same amount of taxes that we all pay, and he makes billions of dollars. It's really quite ridiculous.
He's paying 0 in taxes, so we're paying way more than he's even paying. But I agree with you 100% fully. I want to talk to you about this. So we have a lot of progressives that come on the station, and they talk about all the programs. And Bernie gets this 100 times on TV on that mainstream junk that they put on TV. How are you going to pay for this? How are you going to pay for that? I could give you the answer, but but I want you to give the answer. How are we going to pay for all these programs?
Yeah, well, there's, three things I want to talk about that. One, prioritizing our dollars. We continue to have corporate bailouts and endless wars. My opponent voted another increase of $22 billion for our national defense, which now sits at $738 billion. That's a ton of money. And anytime we roll back military spending, they roll it back on the service members, not on these military contracts. So it's time that we stop paying for endless wars and start prioritizing our money right here at home. The cost savings of things that we talked about, the having clean air, clean water helps with your health. Having good paying jobs helps with things. It lowers some of the social issues we see with drug overdoses, crimes, gangs, gun violence. So the cost that we save there is not just in dollars, but in human lives. So it's like, how can we not do that? And the third thing the third thing really is a wealth tax. The year I was born in 1981, we had a 70% marginal tax rate, which meant anyone who made at that time $312,000 or more had to pay a higher tax on that next dollar. Right now, there's a bill that AOC had suggested for a marginal tax rate of 70% on people making more than $10 million. So 95% of most people in the United States make under $312,000, which is what that old marginal tax rate was. So we're talking about $10 million. That is such a small amount of people, and it would generate billions of dollars. So when we talk about how do you pay for it, you're going to have a wealth tax. It's not going to hurt American people. We've paid our fair share. It's going to hurt. It's going to hit the people who continue to siphon out our money for their interests and not the interests of everyone else. And the last thing I want to say, and we probably have all heard it before, but when they talk about these wealthy tax cuts and these wars in other countries, we never ask how we're going to pay for it. But yet when we talk about education, healthcare, good paying jobs, suddenly they throw their hands up and say, oh, wait, those are radical ideas. How are you going to pay for something like that? Our debt continues to go up $1 trillion again with the new budget that Donald Trump just suggested. It was $1 trillion more last year. We pay $530-something billion in interest alone. So anyone who's had a credit card knows that it's the interest that kills you in the long run. So, it's time that we are fiscally responsible, and that is not a Republican. They don't get to claim that, because every time a Republican is in office, they increase our national debt, and they don't do things that are good for the people. And it's time we take that back and say, no, we're the party who's doing the responsible thing, and I'm going to make sure that we do that.
3 more questions left. Again, Rachael Ventura, running for Congress in Illinois. I want to talk about this. I've had quite a few people from the heartland, from the Midwest on the program and talk about issues. Basically, we saw in 2016, and we've seen pretty much even before that, the Democrats really have trouble winning in the heartland. They put up candidates, we know, like Hillary Clinton, who lost the blue wall. And even before that, it's been tough, unless Barack Obama won a lot of states in the heartland because, he ran a progressive campaign. Now, he, in my opinion, lied about a lot of those things, didn't do anything really progressive in his first term, where he had 2 years of a Democratic state Senate and House. But that's another story for another day. Why do you think the Democrats can't win in the heartland?
Yeah, I think it's apathy. And one of the things that you brought up, Obama, is that, he gave so much hope to people, but then when that didn't transpire, it created a jaded, populace where they don't want to believe things are going to change. And it's hard. I go to doors, we knock on thousands of doors, and people say, oh, what does it matter? You're not going to be able to change anything. They've lost hope that the people have a voice, because we've been told time and time again that wait your turn, sit back, we know better, we have to do this. And then we're given a bill of sales that just isn't honest. And, Illinois is very corrupt when it comes to this politicians. 3 of our governors sitting, well, now one of them's been released, but sitting in penitentiaries. So that we definitely have a trust issue here in Illinois. It doesn't help with our current political system too. We have the Speaker of our House is also the top of our party, gets to dictate where those dollars go. This is why campaign finance is so important. We need to give the voice back to the people. We need to encourage voting again. We need to take down those barricades that allow people to vote. But more than that, we have to have honest politicians. We have to have integrity and ethics brought back to our government. This is something that not a lot of people are talking about. And I think people just get tired of it. It's easy to say, oh, every politician's a liar, but it's not. I mean, there are good people out there, but they get run out. And when they get run out and run over, they're not going to run again. They get tired and they pack up and they go home, or they leave the state, or whatever they do. But they realize that without the help of the people, it's a dead end. You either join the corrupt system or you get the people to help you change it. So I'm asking for people to get involved, help us change it. My website's electventura.com. There are places all over this United States who are also asking for the same thing. Find those politicians, go to them, lend them your time, your money, your energy, and then share it on social media with other people. Give hope back to the people so we can get rid of the apathy. In my home precinct, they had 14% voter turnout in the last election. It worked out to be about 135 people in that precinct. That is so sad, and that's why you have cities that, with just only 4,000 or 5,000 votes, they can run an entire city. There's congressional districts that are not much different than that. And so with just a few people getting out there vote, they can maintain the power. But when we have everybody out there voting in large masses saying, this is what I want, that is the only way we are going to change this system. And it's so important. So when you go to the voter booth, take 2 or 3 friends, take your neighbor, find out if they've voted, encourage them to get out there and vote, and help educate them with what is happening in our country right now.
Last question. How has the reception been on the ground? Is there a lot of, people saying, hey, we've kind of had enough of all this establishment BS. We need to get some new people in there and shake this up. So how is the campaign going on the ground?
Yeah, our campaign is going fantastic on the ground. We've knocked up almost 15,000 doors. I've got 300 volunteers and growing. We've got thousands of signs in our district. Yard signs work, everyday people putting them up in their yards, not on blank corners or in the parkway. And so we get about a 60% for the progressive message, me as a candidate, approval in voting, 30% undecided, and less than 10% for my opponent. So the trick with our campaign is making sure that we can reach enough voters. There's about 90,000 estimated voters in our district. I need 45,000 of those votes, and we still have about 50,000 people left to reach. So if anyone can make a donation so that we can reach those people, my website again is electventura.com. We know the progressive message is resonating here. We know people are getting excited, getting involved, but the question is, can we reach all those voters who haven't heard about us yet? Because we don't have millions of dollars. We have a lot of people doing a lot of work right now, but your help could really go a long way.
Rachel, before we go, and electventura.com, if people do want to, help out, a donation is appreciated, of course, but if people, don't have that cash to do that, can they do phone calls or texting from the website, even if they're not in your district?
Yes, sign up to volunteer. We have virtual phone banking. And then obviously social media, getting out there, helping us share that message, asking other people to donate, say, I believe in this candidate, please help her. But even, we get the $1 donations, we get the $3 donations. Every little bit helps. Sharing it with your friends and family. I mean, that's what it's all about, us coming together, and being a massive force.
If we want environmental justice in this country, I think this is the person to start with. So Rachel, it's true. But Rachel, thanks so much. Rachael Ventura running for District 11 in Illinois for Congress. We need a fighter. We need to get the millionaires out of Congress. And one way to do it is get the 34th, you said, richest 34th, congressional person out of office. So that's a great try to get him out of here. Hopefully we will. Rachel, thanks so much. Rachael Ventura, electventura.com. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on.